We are starting up our session, so if you would remove all distractions, which means silencing your phone, shutting your door, and being ready to give your full attention to the class. And if you're joining us through watching the video, please have a word processor program open and running to follow along with the activities in your class report. And we'll do a very quick quality check to make sure that everything is running the way it's supposed to. So if you see the red record in the upper left corner of the screen, the quality check at the top of the screen, and if you can hear me speaking right now, please go to the reactions button on the bottom right hand of the screen and click raise hand. And everyone has, so if everyone would now click on lower hand. We don't seem to have any sound problems, so we'll go ahead and skip that one. So welcome everyone to those who are with us today and those who are engaging with us asynchronously. It is Friday, January 28th, 2022, and my name is Dr. Hochstein. Today's topic is the historical context to educational developments that have led us to the era of engagement. We'll be talking about some of the content from Chapter 4 of Garrison's 2014 book, Thinking Collaboratively, Learning in a Community of Inquiry. So at the end of this session, you should be able to briefly describe the history of asynchronous education and what it tells us about what we currently think of as the most important characteristics of distance education. First, though, we'll show you how to use the annotation tool. You'll be using several annotation tools in the session, and each works in roughly the same way. Right now, you'll be drawing a face to show your current understanding of the topic. Somewhere at the top of your screen, you should see a bar that looks like this one. If it isn't there, move your mouse to the top of the screen and it should appear. So click on View Options, and when the options appear, click Annotate. Once you do this, you should see this next bar appear. And for this activity, click Draw, and you'll see some options. Pick the thin wavy line and draw your face. And when you're finished, click Mouse. No matter what annotation you use, you always have to click Mouse to go back to normal. A wonderful face, Dawn. Looking good, Joe. Looking good, Dusty. Oh, and clear. So now that you know how to use the technology, I'm going to ask each of you to tell me the name of one of your favorite classes and one thing the instructor did to make it a favorite class. So please raise your hand when you're ready for me to call on you and be as brief as possible. And make sure that you hit the microphone icon on the bottom left of the screen before you start to talk, or we won't be able to hear you. So who is ready to talk? Joe.
I guess mine would be, it was a marketing strategy course, and the instructor made it really fun because she gave us like our own like major company to follow throughout the course and kind of come up with a strategy for that company. So that was cool.
That sounds great. Dusty.
I'm just thinking about many years ago in my undergrad, I had a class called the History of Science. And what was really fun about it was that the professor would make these kind of broad, obviously false claims, like the world is flat and I can prove it. And then we would spend days trying to prove him wrong, but we had to do it, like using science. So it was really neat.
Excellent. Dawn.
So this is from high school. It was actually two classes that were kind of taught collaboratively. It was called American Studies. And so the language arts teacher would have us read books from the same time period that we were learning in history class. And so it all tied together, and I finally understood history. And then also we played Wheel of Current Events Review in the history class, and it was super fun.
Sounds great. So we will come back to that with the exploration phase. Early distance education from roughly the 1880s to the 1980s, primarily achieved through sending printed course packets through the mail. All students received the same materials, completed the work by themselves, and sent the materials back. According to James Crotty, the same method was used with radio delivering courses in the 1920s, and television actually started to be used in the same way in the 1930s. Much like an assembly line, the process and materials were identical for all learners, and that streamlined the process considerably for the educational institutions, but often an exam score provided the only feedback for the students. Education through this postal system was popular. In just one school, the International Correspondence School, total enrollments had reached 900,000 by 1906. However, as Garrison noted, completion rates were dismal, with only 20% of students in one of the more popular institutions completing a degree. Garrison suggests this was due to students being required to be almost completely autonomous due to low communication and low interactivity within the classes. We're going to ask you to imagine that you are taking a distance education course before the use of the internet. In the poll box, rate how difficult such a course would have been for you just based on presentation mode. So it looks like most people thought it would be more difficult than it would be easy. I would tend to agree with that. And now we'll use the annotations text box to indicate what the hardest part of such a class would be for you. Remember, use annotations by going to View Options, selecting Annotations, and then choosing Text. And if you would write your answers below. And for those of you watching this as a video, write your answer in your class report. Procrastination definitely would be an issue for me. Anyone else? Not getting clarification on content, definitely. Just for sake of time, I think there we go. The Postal Service definitely might lose your work. Well, according to Garrison, campus class size has increased in the last 50 years, and this has resulted in an increased use of the lecture as a method of education. And that allows sometimes hundreds of students to be in the same class as one instructor. And in these larger classes, students are often tasked with taking notes and understanding the material themselves, as interactivity with the instructor is practically impossible. So through the poll, if you would let me know the size of the largest lecture class you've ever taken, and you may have to scroll down to answer. 2 of you had under 50 and 1 of you had over 200. That's amazing. And of course we have to follow that up with letting me know how you felt about or would feel about a lecture class with over 100 people using the reaction emoticons. Taking a course via DVD through the mail, sort of like a Netflix thing, that sounds awful. To use the emoticons, click the reactions icon at the bottom of the screen and then click on the 3 dots to see all of the emoticons available to you. I see Dusty has a sad face. Okay, there we go. And we've got an open mouth. Excellent. So bigger is not necessarily better. Today, the rise of the internet has led to the possibility of students becoming more engaged in their education than ever before. One of the reasons we know about the importance of engagement is by studying those deficiencies in early distance education and the in-person lecture halls. In online classes, students have the opportunity for enhanced feedback from instructors. This could include additional information about a topic or feedback from student performance. It also allows for interactive experiences where students can demonstrate understanding beyond simple memorization through the use of discussions, demonstrations, or performances that the traditional classroom might not have the time for. Using the annotation tool Stamp, put a check mark behind the following things that you would prefer. If you would prefer lecture coverage instead of lecture plus interactive activities, you would put a check mark next to or behind lecture coverage. Same thing for questions answered only in class or questions both in and outside of class. And if you're joining us asynchronously, give your answers in your class report. Okay, we do have someone that prefers only in class, but pretty much everyone's going with the answers in the right-hand columns. The integration phase. So we've established that interactivity and communication are essential components to effective education, both of which are strengths of online education. So remember back at the beginning when I asked what your instructors did to make your class a favorite class. We're going to give you a poll really quickly to indicate what type of course that method would fall under. Which would it most closely match with? And people more likely chose the interactive online courses. I probably should have had a third option there to be more interactive lecture courses, but we live and we learn. Okay, and if you could use the chat box to tell everyone why your favorite practice fit into that category you selected, that would be great. And if needed, make sure to give your answer in your class report. So the interaction aspect, not having any online classes in 1988. How about you, Dusty?
Sorry, I was just a slow typer.
Oh, no. And I do like that you went with the interactive because even though it was a lecture, it was still being interactive. Resolution phase. So we talked about early distance learning as well as the use of seminar halls, and there's a surprising number of similarities between the two. For our final poll, if you could click on all the attributes that are shared by early distance education and large lecture classes. Okay, we have some variety of answers. We have the correct answer should be high student autonomy. So students are expected to do everything by themselves, and low levels of interactivity and low levels of communication between the students and the instructors. And we're moving on because we are just about out of time. Well, we're out of time. What we've learned is that early distance education was limited by the available technology. And from that, we've learned that interactivity and communication are essential educational requirements. So our final understanding check would be for you to draw your face again about how you feel about your understanding of the information now that the session is done. I was a little bit surprised that everyone had smiley faces at the very beginning. Dusty, well, all of you have, Dusty's going above and beyond. So today's session is complete, and thank you for your attention and participation. And let me know if you have any additional questions. Thank you.